Before we start the video, there is in fact Finding Nemo themed plushies within my store. You can either have them as a hanging decorative plush with a ribbon or as a keychain. Link in the description below. Apparently Genshin Impact, the mobile, PC and PS4 video game, has now been cancelled. 2021. Hashtag Boycottgenshin was circulating on Twitter and I had to take a look. And apparently there are 5 main reasons why Genshin Impact is being cancelled and we must boycott them. The first one is there's a piece of dialogue with an NPC called Ulf, who declares that he wants to build a boat for his love Flora. Problem? Flora is a little girl, so Ulf, what you doing? She's a little girl. The thing is, if you actually look at certain pictures that show early versions of Mondstadt, Ulf is standing next to Flora, who is a fully grown woman, meaning that earlier versions of the game had Flora as a young woman, and they most likely haven't changed the dialogue for it. An oversight for sure definitely should be corrected, but I don't think that Ulf is actually a kiddie diddler. I think they just changed her model and forgot about that part of the dialogue. Next, but the lack of dark-skinned characters in Genshin Impact. There's Kaya and Xinyan, but there's no others. But this is what some people had to say regarding the lack of dark-skinned characters in Genshin Impact. This is how your dark-skinned characters should look, not 2 shades below pale, not fluctuating tones. They should have dark skin. Also, we're not exotic and scary. You can write dark-skinned characters without using colorism and racism as a big plot point. Also, these remarks towards Kaya, why did you call him exotic? Look at how her skin tone changes, come on! And then on the other side you have, I still have no idea how this picture is considered racist. She's just wearing a punk rock-esque outfit and is called fierce due to her appearance. If race is all you see, that's a reach, and this is coming from a black person. Xinyan is described as scary because of her fierce eyes and fashion. Her skin colour is literally never brought up. Stop taking things out of context and making a fuss over it. Kaya is addressed as exotic because he's from a place I cannot pronounce, which is literally not a nation in Teyvat, but a completely different world. Concerning the iPad, Lumin and Paimon were literally talking about a tan line. But here's the thing, Genshin Impact is still a fairly new game. It's only a year old and it's a game that has constant updating content. We haven't even seen the majority of the world in which Genshin Impact is set in. There's Mondstadt, which is based on German culture, and there is Liyue, which is based on Chinese culture. So of course, the majority of the game's characters we have so far are either white or Chinese, because that's proportionate to the country's races in real life. But we know something. We know there must be a lot of other black people in the Genshin Impact universe because Kaya isn't from Mondstadt, he just lives there. So there has got to be at least a few more black characters within the game for Kaya to be black. You must have parents, right? Perhaps later on down the line we will get an area of the game that has a higher proportion of black characters. Maybe this is already planned, or maybe the dev team will add it in response to this backlash. But we don't know that yet because the entire game is not out and probably won't be out for a very, very long time because, as I said, it's a game that is in constant development with new updates. So we can't make assumptions about a game that we don't have the full picture of. Something I would like to add to this is, as somebody of Chinese descent, I have been waiting for a game that has a high proportion of Chinese characters for a long time. A lot of anime games have Japanese or white characters, but not Chinese. So it's nice for Chinese people to see themselves represented once in a while. We are a group that is also underrepresented, and it's to be expected that a lot of these characters are Chinese because the developers are Chinese. It's a Chinese-based company. I'd also like to address the colorism claims, particularly in regards to Xinyan. Xinyan is not from Liyue, but she has a Chinese name. I think in this regard, it might be suggesting that Xinyan is actually mixed race, black and Chinese, which would mean she isn't actually an example of colorism. She is a representation of a much underrepresented group, which are Black Asians. While I understand that representation is important, I really don't like the idea that devs should have to dictate their game around the people who play them. Yes, there are certain things that devs can add to encourage players. They need the players to play the game. That's how they make their money. But it's their game. They don't have to do whatever we want them to do. And I don't want characters for the sake of representation. I'm not here gunning for a Jewish Genshin Impact character because I wouldn't be interested unless it's a fully fleshed out character. I don't want characters there just to represent a group. I want them to be fully fleshed out, to have a story, to have a personality, and in my opinion, if they started suddenly adding loads of different races of characters, it would be for the wrong reasons. So I don't think we should demand things of devs. Just let them do it organically. If they don't do it, they don't do it. You can judge it when the game's out. I just personally would not want to see a Jewish character, for example, being shoehorned in for no reason to no consequence. The next point is a little bit tricky because I'm not part of one of these groups and I can understand the nuance. There are certain criticisms that the Hilichurl dance animation is problematic because it's based off Indigenous dances. Some Indigenous people had to say on the matter. I'm not an Indigenous person, I don't understand what they go through, and I've never had an experience as an Indigenous person. The only thing that I can speak to is my understanding of animation and animation inspiration, which I will be getting onto shortly. Hashtag Boycottgenshin. Some of y'all need to stop acting like Indigenous people are overreacting about the fact that Hilichurls are literally based off of us. Hilichurls are treated like savages and called like primitive and devils. Where have I seen this before? The way Hilichurls are talked about in-game mirrors how white people often in history and even today talk about Indigenous people. It's blatantly obvious. miHoYo absolutely knew what they were doing. By the way, you're getting blocked immediately if you're being anti-Indigenous under this tweet, lol. I am tired. I'm not overreacting. I'm disgusted and uncomfortable that these monsters in this game were literally blatantly based off of my people. An 100% Indigenous person here, please listen. As somebody who would be considered a whale, I feel nothing but pure anger at the fact that my people were the basis for chills. I'm devastated because I have a big hyperfixation on this game, but I'm not going to let that stop me from speaking out. Hilichurls are seen as monsters, cursed people. Is that really how miHoYo see me? As a cursed monster from some dark abyss? miHoYo got some explaining to do right now. I'm extremely proud to be Indigenous, and seeing miHoYo only sees me as an enemy, I just have no words. It's extremely hurtful, and if I see anybody that isn't Indigenous pushing this off, it's on-site/neg. And people think this is demonizing and vilifying Indigenous groups by prescribing their culture to monsters. I can understand this from an animation standpoint because animators do use things in the real world to animate certain movements. For example, Dala Mendy's belly dancing work was used as inspiration for the Draenei dancing emote in World of Warcraft. This doesn't mean that the developers think that Indian people are like aliens. They just used the movements and the style for the Draenei dance because they thought it fit the character and because they liked it and it was interesting. Although something could be said about if the intentions were that it fit the character, that they equate Indigenous people to Hilichurls. It's a tricky subject for me to talk about because I'm not an Indigenous person, but I can understand finding inspiration in the real world that you could use within your animations. Maybe instead the Hilichurls could do the Macarena or the Cha-Cha slide. I think we should do that instead. That would be highly entertaining. Can I understand the Indigenous people's point of the argument? Absolutely, I get where you're coming from. Do I also understand the animators maybe just looking at the movements and finding them interesting to animate, not necessarily ascribing the idea that the Hilichurls are the same as Indigenous people? Yeah, I can understand that. Again, obviously, I'm not Indigenous, and if you want to comment down below your thoughts if you are an Indigenous person, feel free to educate me. Maybe I'm a small-brained ignoramus. But that's why I made this video partly. Tell me things I don't know, and then I'll know. The last 2 points were in regards to security and content drops, which I can completely understand. So let's sum up. Point 1, null and void. Point 2, well, we have to wait for the full game to be out before we can judge the game. We only have what we have so far, which you can criticise, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and anything else is complete speculation. Also, I'm a little bit concerned that people aren't happy about Chinese people being represented when in video games. There are very few Chinese characters that have personalities and fully fleshed out stories. That's a bit of a worry to me. The third point, grey area, can understand the Indigenous viewpoint, can understand the animation viewpoint. Maybe they should change the animation, they should just change it. Maybe that's what's best, because there's far too many different conflicting points, and we can't consolidate an ethical, solid answer without taking it out completely. Inspiration versus demonization, it's getting very fuzzy. Just get rid of the dance and replace it with something else. That's all I really have to say on this. I hope I wasn't too biased, as people say, because I do enjoy Genshin Impact. I do enjoy the game. I think some of the drop rates and the amount of money that they want you to put in is absolute trash. But I enjoy it for what it is, and I hope that in the future they can learn and grow from it. Don't forget to take your meds and drink some water, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.